how's the technology changed in those? I mean, you were talking about there's almost no suspension anymore.
Formula One, it's just an aerodynamic thing. For instance, I'll give you an example. The front wheels point forward. Well, on a racing car, you change them towing in, towing out, to whatever you want to do. Well, in Formula One, you have them pointing exactly forward. Because if you have them, it's fashionable in racing to have slight toe out. Road cars towing, racing, slight toe out. Well, an aerodynamicist like Adrian Newey, he would faint at that because you're creating more drag.
Yeah.
So you put the wheels dead straight, and you'll get more downforce, and the downforce will overcome the negative effects of other things because they are flying machines. It's drag versus air resistance. It's just all aerodynamics.
Take that a step further. You also had a start in another career, sort of associated with F1 powerboat racing.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's where I can't say no.
Yeah.
Do you want to go in this thing? 2 or 3 people die every year doing it, and there's only 40 people doing it. Yeah, I'll do that. So we fly to the tip of the heel of the Italian boot to Gallipoli, and we eventually get there. And these things, they're just I had no concept of, no idea what I was doing. So did a factory visit because they make Isotta Fraschini. They used to make, in the 20s, they made the Italian version of a Rolls Royce. Now they make cars. Now they make marine engines. And they're 2 massive turbo diesels. Can't remember. They were over 1,000 horsepower, but they're enormous torque. Much more torque than a petrol car could ever have. So they put these engines in these things, and then and these powerboats bounce across the water. Well, water isn't water when you're going at speed. It's hard. It turns into concrete. And these boats, every time they go bang, bang, bang across the water, it's 10G impact on your body. And they fly, they can backflip, they can go up and can dive into the water, and when they go into the water, they go a long way down. And they can, because you've got these weird things called waves that move around, like a racetrack. Imagine a racetrack doing that. Anyway, these waves, they can land sideways and then skid across the water. They can roll, they can do... Anyway, so I get in this... They said, you can't go in the boat. This is the last second, just about to get in the boat.
I was going to say about this, your helmet.
I've got a white crash helmet. You can't get in the boat, you've got to have a yellow, an orange crash helmet. I thought, oh, thank God for that. I don't have to go in this thing. And the phones are going, and they go, all right, let him go in it. So I go in this boat, and then I could see why you needed an orange helmet, because the Lamborghini-powered boat exploded in front of us. And the crewmen are in the water, thrown out into the water to get out of the fireball. And the waves, blue sea with little white horses, you know. Well, you can't see a white crash helmet there, but you can see their orange crash helmets very clearly. That's why they have orange crash helmets. Anyway, we missed the Lamborghini crew with our boat, and there was a story there which I wrote, but it's... And oh yeah, I finished that story. I'm trying to describe what it's like, equating it to an enormous car crash I had when I was a teenager, which included periods of flight. Yes. But where that crash just took a few seconds, this thing takes about an hour. So it's like crashing a car really badly for an hour.
And I think the other thing you said is you daren't stand upright if you want a spine, and if you value your teeth, you have to sort of your whole time is spent looking after your body, isn't it?
You don't put your tongue out because you'll sit on the floor, and huge impact. And the crew said they said it's not the boat can withstand it; it's the people inside the boat that suffer with the impacts. Somebody said, I don't know if it's true, that these drivers, they get shorter as their spine compresses over periods.
I could well believe that. It's not something you want to do for an extended period of time.
No, no, constant 10G impacts must have an effect on you.
The other thing with impact, if we look at it, is drag racing, which I believe you described as sitting on a chair on a railway line and then getting hit by an express train. It's sort of you took a trip into drag racing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was a rail. A rail is a dragster. The ones with the huge wheels at the back, huge engine, and a long frame with little wheels at the front. That's called a rail. And somebody made a two-seater rail. Some Swedes. And they had and my pilot was a 16-year-old Swedish girl. And they put me into this thing at Santa Pod. Couldn't say no. And you just find, the thing about it is, it's over so quickly that you don't have time to be frightened. It's just bang, and you have to make sure your head is against something at the start, because you don't get banged, and then off you go. And yeah.
It's very much a niche market here. I mean, it's big in the States. I remember as a child picking up a copy of Hot Rod and from the world of Minis and Anglias racing in a car. It was a completely different world. But you did have people from the old school of racing, like Sidney Allard, actually having a crack at this, didn't you?
Yeah. I used to go to his shopping party. Sidney Allard. Anyway, it was another thing. It was interesting that before I got into this Swedish built, or it was an American thing, but run by a Swedish team. The Swedish chap who was showing me around the car was saying, with a broad accent, saying, if you crash, it brake here, and that piece fly off, and this brake here, and he's pointing to all the bits where the thing, and you stay in this bit, and that's your sort of cell that protects you. Right. We didn't crash.
Oh, glad you didn't. I mean, we've watched times in drag racing come down, I think, from the 60s, they were sort of 9-10 seconds. You're now sort of almost sub-3.
Yeah.
Now, talking of speed, you do say in the book there's a point beyond which acceleration becomes uncomfortable. We all like the idea of fast cars, but sometimes you just want to get in and plod home after a long day, don't you? You don't want to be everything screaming at you.
It's exhilaration turns into discomfort. It's like if I tickle you, you know? I'm not going to, but it becomes an assault after. And it's the same, but I think the same thing with acceleration. It's just so brutal that,
And you've tested so many of these brutal cars. We know you for the Italian collection, but there's a lot of other racing cars you race from other nations, despite the Alfa connection, which everybody knows about. Tell us a little bit about some of the non-Italian cars.
Yeah, I've written for non-Italian car magazines as well, and which is good because it gives you something to compare them with. And race non-Italian cars as well, quite a lot of them actually, and the Italian cars have a following. Why is that? There's the Auto Italian magazine. We wondered whether it would survive because print was going down the toilet, and the fact that it's niche was what was its reason for survival, which turned out to be a good thing.
There is a passion about it, isn't there? You the followers of Ferrari, they are so committed to those particular cars. What do you think it is that drives it?
Well, Italy's famous for design. Italy's got good bits and bad bits. We won't talk about the bad bits. But design is one of the things it's famous for. And that leaked into the car business. So That's what makes them, what gives them an attraction, why there's a following for them.
Mm. Oh, well, let's flip it. There's also a following for other things. The Lotus Cortina, that was an amazing little car. You take a prosaic sort of 60s, three-box saloon. The average chap is going to plod up and down the motorway and try and sell things to other people.
I've raced Lotus Cortinas and I've raced the Alfa GTAs that they raced against. And,
but it's quite a simple design, isn't it? The
very
Cortina.
Oh,
You've got the McPherson struts.
It's amazingly simple.
Cart springs at
amazingly simple. I mean, it's the opposite end of the spectrum to the Jaguar E-Type. It's just so simple and easy to run.
Mm. And it probably taken by Colin Chapman to the extreme with the catering, which just seemed to be
Colin Chapman, amazing, clever. But I mean, he had to do all sorts of things to stay in business, to compete with other people.
What is it about the specialist sports car industry, do you think, in the UK? Because we see them rise, we see them get battered, we see them fall, they come back again. There is a love almost of the little guy winning out, isn't there? The Marcos, the Lotus, you know,
so many.
Jetson. They're all small manufacturers, but they want to push towards a big time.
Well, motor racing is very much a UK thing. Club racing, it's the UK is where it happens, and it exists in other parts of Europe, but not in the same way as it does. It hasn't got the same following as it has in the UK.
Do you think that's? Why do you think that probably is?
Well, there are lots of race circuits, thanks to World War II. Perimeter road of airfields.
Yeah, we should explain it to the younger people that in World War II, basically, a large chunk of England was almost an aircraft carrier for large American bombers. Yeah. So that's the reason we're left with all these.
It's something to do with an airfield.
Yeah. What are we going to do? We can go up and down it or around it.
Yeah, perimeter road. Goodwood's a good example. Yeah. Silverstone used to be a good example. Thruxton is a good example. Castle Combe. They add to them and mess about them. Goodwood has kept the original.
And if you look at, say, foreign circuits, what's your favourite Italian circuit?
Mugello.
Okay, tell us a little bit about it.
Mugello, it has elevation changes. There's fast bits and slow bits, flows nicely. It's in a nice bit of countryside, the food's good there.
Yeah.
And it's the infrastructure is really good, the pits, the buildings, the complex, must be funded by the local council because there's no private money, could never do that. And it's just a lovely place to be. But there are so many circuits in Italy. Well, there are several circuits in Italy where they haven't got a large piece of real estate. So to get the track length, they just go up and down, up and down, up and down. So you end up with lots of short straights with possibly tight corners at each end. Doesn't flow. Too many of those in Italy. And also they're miles apart. Italy's difficult to get from one end to the other. Mountains.
Whereas England, you can just truck up and down the M1 and you're more of those anyway. Yeah. Now, you've done a bit of hill climbing.
Yeah.
You've done some hill climbs in Italy as well.
Yes.
And I think some people are familiar with the Isle of Man TT.
Yes. And
you go there and you see all this sort of bags strapped to the side of houses, so you come around and you're going to wallop it. Yeah. It is racing through very crowded streets, isn't it?
Yeah, the hill climbs in Italy, I look upon them as social events. It's wining and dining, dinners in castles, hanging out in bars, in between your runs, low stress. That's not like motor racing.
But you did take your wife's Lotus to Italy.
No, it's something that the rest of your team, in my case, my team has a total of two, me and my wife, and she can enjoy it as well. Whereas at a race circuit, what does she do at a race circuit? She's in the pits, and there's a lot of hanging about all day. It's not the same as being in Italy at a hill climb.
It's a lot more sociable.
Yes.
Talking of socials, there you are as a young man, and your then, I think, girlfriend or wife managed to by talking to somebody at Bugatti at a ball, which we'd also like the story on because that had quite an interesting finish. They managed to swim you a drive or something.
Yeah, Romano Martioli was the CEO of Bugatti, and he bought the name and built a factory in Modena, a greenfield site, and started making these cars. Never understood how the finances worked, but who knows. Anyway, he did that thing. And when he launched the Bugatti supercar in the 1990s, it was an amazing piece of kit. It was four-wheel drive, 4 turbochargers, luxury interior, fast car. Cost a lot of money. Anyway, he had launch parties in different European capitals, and the London one was in Park Lane at the Grosvenor House Hotel. 1,000 people. All whoever organised it for him, he chose the most influential people he could find, and the press. I'm not influential, but I was press. So we were there at this glittering event, black tie event, and my girlfriend at the time, who was quite extrovert, in a nice way, and she marched me up to him, and he said, you know, give him a car, go test drive, whatever. And Romano just nodded and waved his hand to one of his men to sort it all out, and that's what happened. And we had access to everything just because it's the way she's sweet on me. She's the one that got me the Miura as well. She knew how to handle men.
It seems that the ladies in your life have always been very, very influential. And they bring some, perhaps I think you said, you know, in some ways they sort of civilise you and buff the rough edges off and manage to manoeuvre you in place. So maybe, you know, they find something in you that you find the other bit.
There's an expression that behind every great man there's an even greater woman. It's always been, in my case, that's always been.
But you were quite cruel to your wife at one point, weren't you? Because there you are, you've got a race car, you've got a Range Rover, the race car's on the trailer behind, you've got a fairly rudimentary map of where you need this transported to, and you give her a 45-second briefing, and she pulls her hand out the bag as she does every time, and suddenly the car is there despite all of this.
Yeah, we were in the north of Italy at Bassano, and I had to go to Venice to do a car thing, and then I had to be up a mountain in the Alps later to do a car thing, a hill climb, a really steep one. And I sent her in not known her very long, and she'd never driven a trailer or anything. And I gave her a quick course on turning the steering wheel wrong way when you're going backwards, and sent her up with a map, pre-sat-nav and all the rest of it, and it was at the top of an Alp. The little tiny steep roads. I didn't know that because a map's a two-dimensional thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And it was only when I was backtracking from Venice to go there, I saw the roads that she would have had to have driven on, and I thought, oh my God. Anyway, she did it, and I was most impressed.
You must have thought this woman could do anything she sets her mind to.
Yeah. No, that's my wife. She's Scottish, and she weighs 7 stone and is tiny, and she has a high-powered job. She goes around the world doing a human resources job. She does. She's off to Barcelona next week.
And so you're left to carry on with your racing. You had an engineering company at one point.
I did,
as well. With some people. I mean, looking at cars and racing cars, or the supercars as well, they always tend to attract people in the rock industry. So you did have a little bit of very good luck, did you not, with a certain Mr. Chris Rea at one point?
Chris Rea, we got on very well. We have similar backgrounds with the Italian thing. And we were, at this time, Auto Italia was brand new. And we heard that that Ferrari were launching the 355 at Goodwood. So we went down there to try and talk ourselves into a Ferrari. Ferrari didn't want to know, just gave us the cold shoulder. Got talking to Chris Rea, and he just gave me the keys to his car and said, there you go, brand new Ferrari, take it for as long as you like. This is after we'd had a chat and stuff. And yeah, he was wonderful. And then after that, Ferrari were really nice to us. Something happened.
Is that a case of you making your own luck in many ways? Because you turned up right, basically black or right.
Yeah.
You've been handed the opportunity because you got in there and you know, exploited it. And then thereafter, you're reaping the benefits. There's a lot of this that seems to happen in your life where somebody does something and then it gets you another step along the line, even though you don't know where that line is going.
The relationship we had with Ferrari after that just got better and better. It was amazing.
I mean, Phil Ward said to me at one point, he said, I'd probably put him in more Ferraris than anybody else that's in the world. You've driven so many of them. There's a point, I think, in the book where you turn up to a track, there's 2 Ferraris on up there at the office. You know, that would be manna from heaven for most people. But does it ever pale that?
Well, I treat everybody's car the same way, whether it's a big manufacturer or a man in a shed with a old banger. I just do what I have to do without hurting the thing. I've never hurt anybody's car. In all those years, the only thing I ever did was I scraped a wheel on a curb on an Alfa Romeo. That was it. And I just look up, it's other people's property, and the object of I always say when I'm driver training someone, I say, well, before you go on track, what's the object of the exercise? We just test day round and round. Are we doing a qualifying lap? Are we racing? What are we doing now? So the object of the exercise when I'm test driving for magazines, different from test driving racing cars, is you've got to look after the car, because journalists have a terrible reputation with people who own race teams or for damaging cars. And I made sure that I never hurt anybody's car, and I always give it back to them.
Do you think it's because a lot of journalists are not race drivers or they're not engineers?
It's all those things.
And they come to it and this is just a great day, I've got my hands on a Ferrari for the first time in my life.
It's all those things. In fact, if I test somebody's racing car and it breaks 6 months later, they'll say, oh, it must have been something that the journalist did. There was an interesting, funny thing. I was with Phil Ward, and we were at Silverstone testing a GT car. It was a Pantera GT car, GT1 modified thing, fast thing. And they said, don't use reverse gear, because we've got great big gears in it to be strong, apart from reverse, which is a little weenie gear that will break. Okay, I won't use reverse. Did my thing, came in, pit garage, stopped in front of the pit garage, job done, went and stood on the pit wall with Phil Ward, and we're looking back across the pit lane to the pit garages, the chaps with the car, and one of the chaps got in the car, put it into reverse, bang, broke the gearbox. I got the blame. And we saw it happen. And it went round. Weeks later, we heard that they blamed the...
Because I think at one point you said, you know, if you are a freelancer and you've broken something, you can be in, you know, you can be in for a, you know, sort of almost a bankruptcy approach to finances.
That's right. It's okay with if you're driving a manufacturer's car, the manufacturer covers all that. But if you're dealing with a private individual's car and something horrible happens, the owner of that car will try and get compensation from the magazine. The magazine will say, no, he's freelance. Then they'll try and come at the freelancer. So there was an incident with, I can't name who it was, where a journalist did get bankrupted. Because a car broke. It wasn't his fault. The car had a fault and it broke. But the person who owned the car won a court case because the journalist couldn't even afford a lawyer or a barrister to... It's just taken to pieces.
There's a lot of this sort of gentleman racer thing, which I'd like to talk about as well, where you've got these one-week championships, and Maserati, for instance, turn up, there's your car, you get in, you go round and round, and you walk away at the end of the day. In historic racing, you're almost expected to be able to pay for the damage, but you've got to apologise for it, haven't you?
Yeah, you don't really want to talk about it before the event, do you?
No.
And for the last 10 years, I trained a chap from nothing up to professional standard racing. You know, it doesn't need me anymore. He races in GT and he's up and gone now. But the understanding I had with him was that I wouldn't be eligible for the damage on cars. And I had one engine blow up in my hands, but they check everything. Everything's there's video and data. They know, the team knows exactly what happens if you've made a mistake, missed a gear, or done something wrong. And I had several unfortunate, well, several. I had 1 or 2 engines go, but it wasn't my fault. It was their time bombs anyway. These things. It's not if they're going to go bang. It's when.
Yeah.
I had a couple of suspension failures that put me in the wall, which was obviously not my fault, because you look at the car afterwards and you can see that it was a thing that broke first. And so I've never been subject of any litigation. No.
And let's talk the tech, because you just mentioned that. You can see what's going on with the car. You've got telemetry these days, you've got laptops, which would, I mean, you're talking about racing one particular car. They can see when you've lifted off, when you've added power.
Yeah.
It's not hidden anywhere.
No, everything's there.
It's a bit like the rugby players at the moment. You know, they're so full of sensors. Every play is recorded. It has changed motor racing a lot. The first incident, I believe, of pits to car radio took place here at Brooklands, famously with a Morgan, which
I didn't know that.
Which apparently was drowned out by loads of everything else. But it was a start. Yeah. And it has changed everything almost exponentially, isn't it? We can watch a race now, and effectively we can see the driver's eye view, which we never could before, and we can see all the stats going on. Do you find that intimidating?
No, it's fine. You've got nothing to hide. It's useful when you're driver training, because you would say to the driver, you're doing this bit, you're losing time at this part of the corner. Well, in the old days, they had to believe what I said. Now you go in the pits and you've got 2 squiggly lines, his squiggly line and my squiggly line, and you could see speed traces in various parts of the track. And there it is. That's, you're losing time in that bit there, and it's there. Can't argue with it.
I mean, the other thing is, from your engineering background, you understand why these things are happening. I think we were talking at one point about astronauts, you know, the glamour flyboys, but you know, they got their Chevy Corvettes, they got their Speedmasters, they got their Apollo moon rocket, but they were also very, very highly qualified engineers who could understand what was happening. And I noticed you and I were back in the day Scion fanboys. You know, we had these little mini clamshell computers, we would log everything in. That must have changed things radically for you as a journalist as well.
Yes, yeah. The technology changes, and you just have to change. You have to change with it. Fortunately, I didn't have to change with it. I hadn't had, what I was doing was the right thing. I just carry on doing it.
Do you think there's a difference obviously in style between, you know, fiddling with some carburetors to get a balance and then plugging a laptop in and just remapping?
Yeah, no, tech is my weak point. I use a laptop every day to do various things, but I do struggle if I have to do something weird on it.
You are a very good hands-on engineer. I'll return to your engineering company with your, the guys from Mungo Jerry, I believe.
Yeah, I used to look after the cars of the Mungo Jerry band, and one of the Mungo Jerry founders, Colin Earl, his brother has a band in the USA, and he had a Lamborghini. This is a long time ago, and that was the first Lamborghini I ever had and worked on. That was amazing. And the chap from The Cure, a band called The Cure, he used to bring his car to me. And,
do you think that, I mean, this sort of gentleman racer thing where somebody looks after your cars, it seems to work for all parties, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You're professionally looked after. It can be raced by somebody who actually knows what they're doing if they want to, and you can, you've got that reflected glamour on both sides.
You just pour in. The difficult thing is trying to convince the owner of the number of hours you have put in to a job on a car. So I'll spend hours developing some widget on a car, and then decide it's rubbish and throw it in the bin and start again. Well, how do you? If you're doing that for somebody else, how do you price that? It's just so difficult. I just think, well, I should have a webcam in the workshop so they can see the hours that I'm putting in. But I don't do that anymore. I stopped that in 2000.
Yeah, and I notice even you take car in for service now, they send you a little video. We have been round it, honestly, look.
They do that. Oh, yeah.
Pointing to this.
That's one idea.